further back.
You're looking radiant today.
Well, we are tuned in, tapped in, turned on.
My question of the weekend, Abraham, was with regards to the anatomy of control versus the freedom that is found within in letting go.
Well, the freedom that is found from within and letting go is the anatomy of control.
So I find myself in a predicament where I have envisioned and leveraged the energy that creates worlds to begin to flow a stream that is seemingly faster than I am allowing myself to keep up with. Seemingly faster, because I know I could keep up with it, but there is an element of paralysis of non-action.
Yeah.
And I found myself on business travel this week in New York, and I use the analogy of an elastic band. I found myself at the very beginning of the week being so taut with not necessarily tension, an element of resistance. And I went to the gym on Tuesday morning before I started my workday, and I fired that elastic band. And it felt absolutely freaking awesome because I let that resistance go. And it's interesting because when I arrived at the hotel on Friday afternoon, I saw the beauty in the construction, because my analogy of my elastic band and the way I felt, when I arrived and I saw the construction and felt the ambience that was being created, looked for the aesthetics of the building and watching the workmen work their magic and bringing this together, and seeing the evolving, the unfolding of now they're taking down the shrouds that they've had up, and seeing what is now before us has offered me a contrast today that has been magnificently beautiful.
Are you saying that we should all be happy in the construction of our life experience?
And
that we are in an eternal state of construction?
And
if we're waiting until it's all pretty before we invite people over, there won't be very many parties because the construction process is so constant.
I've taken beauty in the knowing that I'm always evolving, forever unfolding.
Yeah.
And I've seen it for what it is.
Yeah. I want to give you something. That was all very good, and we are appreciating it immensely.
Thank you.
Something that may help you. That feeling of paralysis. Anybody understand what he's talking about? That feeling of...
Yes, I'm not the only one.
that feeling that I should be doing something that I either don't want to do or I don't know what to do. And so that feeling of paralysis, let's just call it what it is the absence of inspiration. And
see, I see it, if I may, because my energy is flowing so fast, and because I am receiving impulse, I am resisting for whatever reason, and this is what I'd like to untangle, hopefully. I find myself in a place of resisting the impulse, and that inherently is creating the tension within.
That's what we're getting at.
Okay.
And so, but here's why. You're really going to like this.
I always do.
Here's what's tangled up in this. So let's start with that feeling of paralyzation.
Yep.
And when you were standing in the old world, that said, well, just do something. Just do something to get the juices started. Just do it anyway. Push through. Persevere. Be vigilant. Use your effort. Buck up. Make it happen. But those tactics don't work for you anymore because you're standing too much in the other world.
Tell me about it.
So what happens is, what we're really talking about is that feeling of paralyzation is speaking about these two concepts, right. The concept of motivation and the concept of inspiration.
Right.
The concept of motivation says, I'm just going to make myself do it. Now, you're all following so far. So think about what happens with, in other words, you could say to yourself, well, I could follow one of two paths. I could allow momentum to increase on either of those concepts. So let's increase the momentum on the concept of motivation, which is making yourself do something because you just need to. So you don't feel like acting, so you don't. And you don't feel like acting, so you don't. And you don't feel like acting, so you don't. And you're not doing anything about trying to feel better. You're just sort of writhing in the what you should be doing and what you don't feel like doing. So you don't feel like doing it, and you don't. And you don't feel like doing it, and you don't. And you don't feel like doing it, and you don't. And you're focused upon what you should be doing that you're not doing. And so you're focusing on it, and therefore momentum is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until a crisis ensues that just sort of forces you to do something about it. It's sort of like you don't feel like paying the bills, you don't feel like paying the bills, you don't feel like paying the bills, but after they turn the lights out, then you feel like paying the bills. There's just something sort of motivating about the lights being turned out. That sort of. So that's the way you allow momentum to increase relative to the subject of motivation. But what if your desire is to allow law of attraction and momentum to increase from the inspiration side of the equation, which means you start with something simple and easy, and you just rest with it until it becomes a little more, and it becomes a little more, and it becomes a little more, and it becomes a little more, until you feel the inspiration to move. This is really a good conversation because most of you, we love you so much, but as much as you have heard from us, you still have one foot pretty solidly set in that world of action, in that world of motivation. And we don't think that there has ever been a conversation that has been so steadily unfolding to bring us to the place that we can have this conversation about the difference between motivation and inspiration than what has taken place.
Yep.
And we would also like to say to you that when you feel paralyzed, we're not encouraging you to take action. We're encouraging you to understand that you're on the wrong paradigm, you're on the wrong track, because whatever you're focused on will get bigger and 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 bigger. But don't you want to create from the inside out? Don't you want the inspiration to come from your full-on inspired version of source flowing through you? Was a leading question, and the answer is, of course I do, Abraham, of course I do. I want that with everything that I am.
You're coming at it from the opposite end of where I believe I am to be at this moment, though. And the way, I think you've framed it absolutely perfectly, because you always do. With having this fast-flowing stream, this energy flow that I'm pulling through, and the inspiration and the impulse to move in a particular way, but there's some level of inherent resistance for me to taking a leap of faith is too strong a word, because I've been in. But you see,
here's the thing that we really want you to hear, because you're making it sound like the momentum is flowing, the momentum is flowing, the momentum is flowing, and for some reason you're just not going along with it, and that isn't accurate. That's
no,
not
because the conditions that I'm finding myself in. It came up slightly yesterday. I'm waiting for the perfect conditions, and I can't. And part of the perfect conditions comes down to responsibility, because I feel I am responsible for others in my life, and yet I cannot perceive. I can perceive their wellness, but I cannot do it for them.
Well, you're going about it in a backwards fashion.
Yeah,
because
that's why I'm here to unravel
it's all
it.
right, but you just said, so you're waiting for the conditions to be perfect to inspire you. And what this workshop has caused us all to come to say is that rather than waiting for the conditions to occur that will inspire me, I'm going to start with something that I am for sure aware has no resistance within it. Allow law of attraction to do its thing that it always does, and I know that inspiration will be the result of that behavior. It really is, okay, it's accurate to say you can't get there from there. You can't get there from there. Now, really, you can get anywhere from anywhere. But not without slumber, not without pushing the reset button, not without a paradigm shift within yourself. Now, have you heard of paradigm shifts where larger parts of consciousness begin to feel a perception of life in a different way? Well, it's really individuals doing it, and you don't have to wait for anybody else to do it. You have the option right here, right now, in any right here or any right now, of focusing on a condition that sort of binds you up, or focusing on the absence of conditions which frees you up. And that's the whole point of meditation. The whole point of meditation is to clear your mind of thought that binds you. And then begin with thoughts that don't bind you, understanding that law of attraction will apply to them, just like law of attraction applies to whatever is active within you, that will get the inspiration moving, you see.